Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Redeemed Marriage Podcast, Rusty and Heather Bryant. We're so glad to be with you this day, this week, and we've got a really special episode planned for today because if you're listening to this and it's the day that it comes out, then this is Father's Day week. And so we're going to be celebrating Father's Day in a few days. But it made us start thinking about men. And so we wanted to do a little bit of a special episode today. So let me just tell you real quick where we're going. We rarely just jump right in, do we? We always have other stuff. But we're gonna try to just jump right in. And so where we're wanting to go today is we want to talk about really what it means to be a man. And give some encouragement to men. But I also think that this is going to be really valuable for our female listeners, probably even more so, to be real honest. But for our female listeners, because I think it might give you the ladies some insight into some of the silent battles, some of the secret struggles maybe that go on in your husband's life and things that he deals with. And so as we started thinking about how can we, do this effectively so that it reaches kind of our audience and where our audience is, we thought that it might be good to sort of use the backdrop of our story and the betrayal. And I know that you guys, you listen to us, some of you know us as well as anybody knows us, which is creepy in some ways, but also we love it. But I think that people know, but our story, we are now approaching 14 years. We're approaching 14 years. That'll be 14 years in August that you confess to being unfaithful. And so, really that part of our journey in life has really shaped a lot of who I am as a man. And so we started talking, well, how can we, do this effectively where it gives some real insight, but there's some depth to it, but also it can cover kind of anybody that listens to this. And so we decided we just open it up to you to ask me some questions.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So most of you know that we don't, if you've listened to us for a while, you know that we don't plan everything that we're going to say. And Rusty was 100% okay with me just asking him questions that I haven't shared with you yet. And so I hope some of these don't catch you off guard.
But I'll be okay.
That's right. But I also know that you just have such a heart for this. And I've talked to a lot of ladies. I'm doing one-on-one women to women mentoring this summer. And I've talked to a lot of ladies that their husbands struggle with some of these questions that I'm going to ask you. And so even if you have not been there in betrayal, even if, you're just listening to us as an encouragement for your marriage, it's just, I think, is going to give insight to how a man thinks and how God created men to be, and how that is affected by betrayal or broken trust or, just anything that comes down the path of marriages. So, all right, the first question I have for you is this. How did my betrayal shake your identity as a man?
Shake it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Shake, not shape. How did it shake you? Like when you found out I'd been unfaithful, how did that shake your identity of who you were, who you thought you were, who God created you to be?
Well, there's I do think that most men are insecure in a lot of ways, and we don't like to admit that. And there's a lot of men that do a really good job of faking that and masking it. And so, and again, all men are different, but for me, that my love language has always been words of affirmation. And so like there's insecurities within me that, I think men are constantly saying, am I good enough? Do I have what it takes? Like those are core questions. Do I have what it takes? Because we feel like we're not adequate to be a husband. Certainly not adequate. We're not, like, being a dad. What in the world? Like, we're not worthy. Do I have what it takes? We ask ourselves that question about our jobs. We ask that question about providing for our families. And, am I good enough? Do I have what it takes? And so when the betrayal happened, like you talk about just completely crushing everything. And it's not just in that moment, it's not, do I have what it takes to be a man? It's like, I'm not good enough, obviously, to be a husband because you went somewhere else. And so then it just trickles down into everything, like all those areas. So every insecurity that I had, just all of it rose to the surface at that point, where I had to question, do I have what it takes? Like, do I have what it takes to be a man? And so that's how it shook me, like, to the very core. It just shook me to a place to where every insecurity that I may have masked, I may have been a poser in a lot of ways, it just all rose to the surface and basically yelled at me and said, nope, you don't have what it takes. You are not good enough. And that's all I could feel in those moments.
Yeah. Your answer to that kind of has spurred another question that I already had, but I might reword it just a little bit. When you were shook, like in those moments of you're talking about all of those things coming to the surface, all those insecurities. In those insecurities, did you feel like you had permission to feel? Did you feel like you had permission to grieve? Or even a word I wrote down is, do you feel like you had permission to be weak in that moment?
Well, boys grow up in my culture and how I grew up. And what I always believed about a man is that we have to be strong. And, I think about even the way that I fathered, and like there was no room, like, don't be hurt. Like, you don't get hurt. You get up and you just keep moving.
And don't cry.
Yeah, don't cry. Real men don't cry,
Right.
that kind of thing. And so I think for my whole life, which was 35 years or so, that's just the image that I had of what a man was supposed to be. There's not supposed to be weakness. That you're the strength. The emotions, you suppress them. You don't let them show. Because that's a sign of weakness. And what happened when the betrayal happened was, I think, read the very first few words of your question.
Okay. Did you feel like you had permission?
Okay, that's where I wanted to stop, because it was one of those things where it hit in such a way that I wasn't seeking permission. I had no choice. Like, I had no choice to grieve and to feel all of the weakness and all of the emotions. I could not hide any of that.
Yeah.
And so I don't even want to say, that word permission. Did I have permission? Well, that kind of goes more to you, and like, did you give me permission to do that? Well, of course you did, because we handled our journey in a real healthy way. But just from a personal standpoint, I had no choice. Like, those things became so real and so clear, and that really shaped who I am now, because I learned how to grieve. I learned how to deal with emotions and also let them out in a correct way. And I learned how to share emotions. And so now, beforehand, I really didn't show a lot of emotion.
Right.
To be real honest, you didn't give permission beforehand.
That's right.
But when this happened, you sort of woke up to this fact of, like, this is part of life. We have to be able to show emotions and to grieve and to process weaknesses and all that kind of stuff. And so, yes, you gave me permission because I had no choice. It was happening anyway.
Yeah.
But then it shaped these last 14 years into who I am now, where I'm a very emotional person and in a healthy way. And so it has taught me that it's okay to admit weaknesses. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to cry. It's okay to have strong emotions. And it's okay to share those with people and for us to journey alongside each other in those emotions.
Yeah. The next question that I have for you really has to, like, I thought about it because of your forgiveness. You know, one of the reels we put on TikTok this week was about the most romantic thing you ever did for me was forgive me. And I think that you did forgiveness really well. When we meet with couples all the time, forgiveness is such a big topic that we talk about. And there's never a time that I think, gosh, I wish he would have done that differently. Like, I think that you modeled forgiveness in a powerful way where it wasn't just swept under the rug and you're like, okay, I forgive you, let's move on. But you walked through it well. It was a moment, but then the process of forgiveness was done really well, where you didn't hold it over my head, but you also really forgave. So my question about that forgiveness is, I wondered if you could talk to us just a little bit about, like, your pride that you had to really, well, I was going to say let go or confront in order to be able to forgive me and then work towards healing in that.
So I'll pause for just a second because you mentioned TikTok. So here's our commercial for people to go and follow us, because that's brand new. I have no idea. That's kind of your thing. But anyway, so
it's
follow
kind
us
of my friend's thing that's helping us with that too.
So follow us on TikTok. It's a whole different crew of people, which is awesome.
It is. And follow us on there. We have like 4,000 views on that video, but we only have like 300 followers. You know,
because we literally just started
like
the page
2 weeks ago. So follow us.
Okay. What was the question? No, I'm just kidding. So it was about confronting pride.
Yeah.
Like everybody is prideful. We're all prideful.
And selfish.
And some people just handle it better. And I think that especially men, there's we do have a lot of pride, and there's something about we want to be a real man. We want to feel like we have rescued. We want to be the knight in shining armor that has rescued our spouse. You know, we want to feel desired and wanted, and just this and some of that is pride, but it's also, that's just how we're created. Like that's how God wired us. And so to be pursued and desired and wanted by your spouse is such a big part of who a man is. And then for a crushing blow of a betrayal in that way just destroys our pride. And so then it's like we have this battle of, okay, well, do we overcompensate and become really prideful in that, all right, you know, I'm not the one that screwed up. You screwed up, and now I'm in control. You know, this is my show now, and I'm running this show. And you're going to do X, Y, and Z for the rest of your life to prove to me. You know, it's like the the pride just overtakes everything and you just overcompensate for that. But then there's also, I think, this side of pride where it's like, oh, my pride has been crushed so much. Like, I don't want to go out in public anymore. I don't want people to see me. When people look at me, they probably think, what did I do to cause my wife to go to someone else? This guy can't even keep his family together. He's not satisfying his wife. It's just a constant like attack, and a hit on pride. And so I think that at this some point where I forgave, and then I got to a place where I had to just, we've talked about this recently because we heard a sermon, but being okay with our story because we can't really change it anyway.
Right.
And so then it becomes, all right, well, the pride comes up in a different way to where it's like, all right, well, I'm going to change the future because of what happened. And so we get to a place where we're understanding that we wouldn't have made these choices, we wouldn't go back and do it again, but we can't change the past. And so our story is our story. We're going to accept it. We're going to be okay with what happened. We're not okay with how it happened and the decisions that were made, but we're okay with that's my story. And so what am I going to do going forward? How am I going to use it to become a better person? How am I going to use it to become a better husband, a better father? And how am I going to use it ultimately for God's kingdom? And that's where you have to kind of push pride aside and say, this isn't about me. This is about God. How do you want to rewrite my story and use my story for your good?
Yeah. And as you talk about that, I think back to pre-infidelity Rusty, and I believe then that you were one of the most confident men that I'd ever met in my life. And I can genuinely say that even post-infidelity, where we are, you are still one of the most confident men that I've ever met. And I know that to be true because your identity is wrapped up in who Christ says that you are. And so I feel like that you have rebuilt that confidence in a way where I can't imagine how you did it, but you did it in such a way that you weren't hardened by what happened and you didn't try to control me. And I see that with a lot of people that we hear from or talk to is their spouses go into, especially the men, go into, I'm going to control everything you do because that's the only way I can get my confidence and my power back. And by the grace of God, you did that in such a way, rebuilt that confidence in such a way that you didn't do it without hardening your heart and you didn't do it without controlling, or you did it without trying to control me. Mm-hmm. And I just think that that's such a testimony to who you allowed God to be in your life during the worst days of your life.
Well, I think that when something like this happens, we feel everything, we've lost all control, and to know that something like this is happening and we weren't even aware of it, then you really gain that understanding of I didn't have control of anything. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden you desperately try to get control of everything.
Yeah.
And I think that that's getting control of your spouse and getting control of, and honestly, I think the last thing that you're trying to get control of is your own self. You're just trying to control everybody else because that's all you know how to do, and that's the safety of being back in control.
Right.
And where I feel like I took that control or wanting of that, the desire of that control, and instead of like making you do all of these things, it was almost like we shifted this balance of power in our marriage. And I really hate to use it that way, but like biblically, I don't think we were where we were supposed to be.
Right. No, you're good. I was checking our time.
Okay. I don't think we were where we were supposed to be because I feel like before the betrayal, I didn't have much of a voice.
Right.
And that's not biblical. Like
Sure.
I'm supposed to be the head of the house. And even though you say I was confident, I really just, to keep the peace, I kind of let you run over me in a lot of ways. And so when this all happened, it really, your heart changed to where you were like, oh my gosh, I have not been who I was supposed to be.
Right.
And so when you shifted, it almost allowed me to have, and I don't even want to say control, but like it was just, hey, I'm
leadership. I allowed you to lead.
Yeah,
well.
I think that's it. And so because of that, it didn't feel like control. It just felt like I get to lead the way I'm supposed to lead now.
That's right. And I recognize that shift, that I kind of bucked the system for the first 15 years. And then I was in such a place of surrender to the Lord and falling in love with who he was, that it was a privilege to let you lead well. And so that was a shift in me. And so ladies, if you're listening and thinking, what is my role in this, is allowing your husband to lead well, and allowing him to be the leader, if he's allowing God to lead his life, and being that encouragement to him, as well as Rusty talked about, that deep desire for men to know they're enough. Like that's such a good word for us ladies to remember, to encourage and speak that truth and that life over your husband. All right, I want to kind of shift to like your identity a little bit. What does being a man mean to you now? And how has that changed?
Well, it's changed a lot. I mean, I feel like I'm a very, very different person than who I was 14 years ago, because I feel like being a man has really shifted into this area of being very open, being very vulnerable. And I feel like that's something that men just don't do very well. We're just not good at it. We're not good at opening up. We're not good at sharing emotions. We're not good at asking for help. It's all that pride that we've talked about, that being in control. We want to let everybody feel like we have it together. And I think that has probably been the biggest shift. And I do think that even in churches today, there's a shift in that mindset of, hey guys, we need each other. Like we need to be able to say, I'm not okay, and I need some help, and I need people around me to support me.
And that's so drastically different from what we experienced almost 14 years ago. Because you didn't have that mentality, was not in place when we walked through infidelity 14 years ago. It was, you were in a place where no one, like literally no one, came and said, let me walk with you,
right,
or let me be here for you, or what can I need? Like you had to reach out to somebody who wasn't even, a close friend to get help as far as mentorship and counseling and things like that. And so I just think that that's such a sweet thing now, that there's a shift in men's mentality of being okay, not being okay.
And it's a slow process, and I think it's a slow change, but it is something that's happening, and I see it happening. I see it happening in our church, and just men that are willing to reach out even to me and saying, hey, let's do some one-on-one sessions,
Right.
and that's usually I think we feel like that's something that's supposed to be reserved for ladies to have their ladies chat and stuff. But guys are starting to come around to, hey, I don't have it all together. I need some support. And that's not who I was 14 years ago. I didn't want anybody to think that I didn't have it all together.
right.
And now it's just kind of like, well, none of us have it all
Right.
together. And so it's okay to be vulnerable and open. And like, even for me, I think a big thing was just emotions. I do think I had big emotions, but they were all happy and positive emotions. Like I was always an extrovert. I actually feel like I'm much more introverted now because I'm very guarded and I kind of keeps people, like, it's hard to trust. And I work really hard at that. But there's also now this emotional side of me that I'm really okay with. And what I think has happened is I think that it's helped us in our communication, because I feel like I can tell you things and you listen, we can be emotional together, but I also feel like it makes me listen better. It makes me empathize and it makes me want to kind of get in the trenches with you or with other people, even our children, and like really dig in. So it's not so much the mentality of get up and brush it off. It's more of, hey, let's talk about it. Let's figure out what's really going on and how can we journey in this together. So really, that's what I believe now. It's so much of an identity. It's just, who am I in Christ? And if my ultimate goal is to be more and more like Jesus, then I've got to look at what Jesus did and how Jesus acted as a man, and I've got to follow that lead.
That's good. That's good. This question really has to do more, Father's Day is coming up, so let's ask one about the kiddos, all right? What do you hope your boys learn about manhood by watching your journey? I'm talking about for the first, 14 years of our marriage, which they weren't around that whole time. They were, 11 and 5? 11 and 5.
9 and 5.
9 and 5. Sorry, I can't add or subtract. 9 and 5 when our story of infidelity came out. And if you've gone back and listened to the podcast of our boys, you've heard from their heart what they learned. But I want to know what you hope that they have learned about marriage, or even more specifically about being a man through this.
Well, I hope that they've gotten a lot of real word pictures. First of all, I think that they've seen that marriage is not easy. I think those first 14 years of our marriage, we didn't really, and again, the kids were not involved, obviously, those whole first 14 years, but we weren't really open to, sharing our marriage. We just wanted everybody to think everything was great. We lived in that culture at the time where it's like, put on your mask and just everybody's fine. We're all fine. You get up and go to church and nobody knows your problems, or you lie about your problems, or you mask them with a prayer request, and then you move on. And so when all of this happened, it caused us to really become much more of an open book. And so our kids, for most of their lives, have seen us living out our marriage in a way where they know marriage is not easy. And our mom and dad went through something extremely traumatic, and they survived. And so I think I hope that picture of marriage, it applies to them in all their areas of life, that, we're going to go through hard things in life, but God is faithful. He's never going to forsake us or leave us. And so because of that, I know that we can do hard things. I've watched mom and dad do hard things. And so I hope that they look at dad, they look at me, and they see, okay, Jesus forgives us. He died on the cross for us. Dad forgave mom for something horrendous that happened. And so how much more is that picture of forgiveness for what Jesus did for me? And so, I just always am thinking hands and feet of Jesus, hands and feet of Jesus. I just want my boys to see that. And so when they get into a situation in their lives, I hope that they never are scared. And they've said this before, and even said it on our podcast, but they feel like they can come to us. We're never going to judge them or shame them, but we're just going to be there to journey alongside them and help, because that's what they've seen modeled in our lives and in our marriage. And so, it's just, I just want to be there for them, and I want them to see a correct picture of Jesus and how Jesus treats his people and how he treats us. And so in turn, I want them to treat their wives that way when they get married. I want them to treat their relationships, their friendships, all of that in the same way.
Yeah. And you kind of spoke a little bit about the openness that we have as a family. And I just think that is one of the most amazing things that came out of such a difficult time in our lives, was that we are just able to be real with our kids. And then watching them as they grow up kind of invite us in to how to love them well, and how to, I don't feel like there's much that we're going to have to figure out. Like, they're really open about, I need this from you, and I would love for you to love me well like this. And I just think that comes from your guidance as a father and as a man on inviting people in to love you well. And I think that's something that you've done amazingly well. So, last question. Okay. What does strength look like in a redeemed man?
Well, we heard a great sermon today. So if you haven't listened,
obviously you haven't.
I haven't listened.
Unless you were there.
Today
Unless
is Sunday.
You were there.
Yeah, we did promote it, but one of our favorite marriage communicators is Ted Cunningham, and he actually preached at our church. So if you want to go back and listen to at Pine Lake Church, listen to Ted Cunningham's sermon from today. But one of the things that he talked about was the individual, and how the individual doesn't go away when you get married, that the individual is still important. And, even throughout that self-care word. And I just know that before infidelity, that I don't know that I was a real individual. Like, I was just kind of what everybody else wanted me to be and what everybody else needed me to be. So I needed to be a good husband. I needed to be a minister. I needed to be a good father. These people want and need these things from me, so that's what I'm going to be for them. And I thought that was what a man was supposed to do, that I'm just supposed to be everything for everybody. And I think that for so long, I really suppressed who I was, just as, like, who is Rusty? Like, who am I as a man? And I remember going on our marriage intensive, and that very first night when they looked at me and they said, I think that they read between the lines and knew that that's who I was. I was like, what can I do for everybody else? How can I serve everybody else? And they said, we want to give you permission to take care of yourself. And I didn't even know what that meant. And so for the last 14 years, I've really just been on this journey of learning who I am. Like, my identity as a man, and who is it that God created me to be. And so much of that is just learning that all of these circumstances around me, the good things, the bad things, the terrible stuff that's happened in our past in lots of different ways, not just, yes, the betrayal, but we've been through miscarriages, we've been through your cancer, we've been through stuff with our boys that have been hard. All of that, yes, it does shape who I am, because our experiences shape us. But ultimately, who am I? Like, my identity is in Jesus and in Christ. And what I know to be true is that God sees me, like you say, daughter of the King. He sees me as his son, and he sees me as his beloved. And so I have to rest in that, and then I also have to understand that all of these things around me, they can try to bring me down, they can build me up, whatever, good things, bad things, all that. But ultimately, it doesn't change who I am in Christ. And so I have to make sure that that's my foundation. And then I allow these circumstances and experiences and things that I have with my family, with my boys, with you, then I allow those things to grow me. But who I am is I am a son of the Most High, and nothing can take that away. And so that's where my confidence comes from, and that's who the man inside of me, that's where all of the manly strength and energy and confidence, it has to come from that.
Yep. And when it comes from that, nothing can take it away. When that is where your strength is, where your strength comes from, when your identity comes, there's nothing that can take that away. And I am so thankful that you have modeled that for our two boys, that you chose to stay almost 14 years ago and have been an example of that to me and to our family, and that you have led well. So I know it's a few days away, but happy Father's Day.
All right.
To
Thank
the
you.
best.
Well,
we went a little long today. I am sorry about that, but I hope that you enjoyed our conversation just about what God calls a man to be, and that you can still be that even after something as trying as infidelity, that God is big enough for even this.
Yep, absolutely.
All right.
All right.
See y'all next time.
See you guys next time.
Peace.